We're going to be talking about Crossroads of Twilight, spoiler filled, you know the drill. I'm not sure how long this review is going to be. I'm not going to summarize this as much as I usually do, but I still have plenty to complain about, so it may end up around the 40-ish minute mark that most of my slog book reviews have been so far. So I'm finally done with the slog now and ready to move on to Knife of Dreams. I'll put my rough scores for the slog books up on screen now. Up until this point, I've very much agreed with the idea of people saying that the slog has been overblown, but justifiably, some people have been harsher on the slog books because they had to wait so long in between each book. That is not the case with this one. I think this book is straight up bad. My edition of this book, excluding the glossary, is around 665 pages. There are some interesting moments in this book, and that's me being generous. But to me, to say that those moments make this book good or even just average is bizarre. Sorry for the delay in putting out this video, guys. I actually finished this book in like 4 days, but I had to go to Germany, so I didn't have time to record the review after I typed it all out. And I actually ended up extending my stay there for a few days, so that's the reason I couldn't put out the video any sooner. It's been about 3 weeks by the time I'm uploading this, so apologies for that. Of course, whether or not you like something is subjective, so to each their own. If you like this book, good for you. But 665 pages, guys, like, come on, that is just not justifiable with the content within the book. Any good moment is absolutely buried under fodder. I've seen people say that books 10 and 11 are basically two halves of the same book. That doesn't make me dislike this any less, if I'm being honest. You know how bad this reading experience was for me? I was 2/3 of the way through this book, about to start chapter 21, and King asked me on Discord what the last interesting thing happened was, and I said, Rand cleansing Saladin. Crossroads of Twilight is the real slog. You want to know actually when I fully just gave up on this book? When Jordan actually took a whole page to teach us how to fucking gay Shane hand wash clothes. And then we get to Elaine's bath time, and I just knew there was absolutely no chance of me enjoying this book. I actually thought this book was good initially. The prologue was decent. I liked Perrin's first batch of chapters, but Egwene and Elaine killed this book, buried it, and stomped all over his grave. In case it's not obvious, I am being hyperbolic. I thought this book was just bad, not terrible. Let's talk about the actual contents of the book now. The only really interesting part of the prologue for me was Rodel Iteraldes, where he's in Arad Naman and he makes an alliance with the Dragonsworn, and they arrange a plan to attack the Seanchan, where they infiltrate the Seanchan held lands in small groups. But Iteralde says that he isn't sending them to do what they think he is or where they think they are meant to be going, so I'm interested in seeing where that goes. We also find out that Grendel has been impersonating Al Salam the whole time with her fake letters she's been sending to Iteralde and other Domani nobles, and it turns out that she's been arranging things so that everybody stays out of Masema's way, if I'm interpreting that properly, which is pretty interesting. The rest of the prologue, besides Davram's, was pretty damn boring. Gawain is one of the most boring characters in the series. I forget he even exists until he makes an appearance, or Egwene mentions him. Davram and Bail are, did I pronounce that right? I think so, are scoping out the army getting ready to besiege Camelin, and it turns out that Daira was attacked by Dark Friends looking to find the seals to the Dark One's prison. Davram said that he wanted to arrange a meeting with some guy that showed up. I'm still not sure who that is. Davram said that Tenobia wears the Broken Crown. We already knew the Broken Crown was related to Saldea after Book 7, but I wasn't sure if it was what the ruler actually wears or if it was just something that's a part of Davram's estates. We saw in Book 1, Perrin's aura had the Broken Crown in it, so I guess him or Fail becomes the ruler of Saldea at some point. Not sure why it would be Perrin instead of Fail. And I guess Davram just dies at some point or abdicates. But I am assuming he dies because there was darkness in his aura at some point in this book. Which is fucking tragic because there was also darkness in Perrin's aura during Book 3, so I guess he dies. And of all the three Emmons Fielder boys, I assumed it was going to be Matt or Rand that died. Not Perrin, but anyways. Sabmitsu's part of the prologue was okay. It was entertaining seeing her command get overridden by Sachel. And we get the return of Loyal. It's good to have him back. And these two Aes Sedai just showcase front and center why this is an anti-Aes Sedai channel. I hate how Aes Sedai compose themselves with a passion. Blocking Loyal's way like that is unacceptable behavior. I was just hoping the whole time that Carlden shielded them both and told them to fuck off. We see the aftermath of another attempt to steal the seals, with Dobrain with one foot in the grave and the second in too far behind it. Then Samitsu has this little "I'm the best, I'm so great" pep talk with herself before healing him. Then Logain shows up with some Asherman and their Aes Sedai. That's really much all you need to take away from the prologue, unless I'm forgetting something. First character appearance was Matt. Matt's chapters in this were enjoyable. just because it's Matt, but in general, they were pretty damn average. You have to actively try to make Matt boring for me, and Jordan actually succeeded in doing so by bringing back that damn circus. Not even Matt could make that interesting. A reintroduction to each and every member of Alan Luca's Grand Travelling Show was the last thing I needed or wanted. After book 5, I thought it would be fun to see Luca again, but no, he's just as boring as the rest of the members. He's just a money-hungry guy that likes to be grandiose. I do enjoy the dynamic between Matt and Luca and how they dislike each other despite their similarities, but that's pretty much where my enjoyment of the circus ends. I like the dynamic between Matt and Egwene too. It was entertaining enough, I guess. I'm kind of grasping at straws here to find stuff I liked about this book. I did like their back and forth though. Egwene keeps trying to take control and act like she's in charge, but Matt is kind of just humouring her while still being in charge himself. Matt keeps acknowledging as well that the Aes Sedai and Egwene never really act like he's just saved them from fates worse than death. If it was me, I'd be gone. I'd gather up the boys and Tuon and peace out, leaving them to fend for themselves. Matt's trying to keep his party hidden, evading any Shan-Chan pursuers. Besides that, he's just courting Tuon for this whole book. I'm enjoying the Tuon and Matt relationship so far. It's good to finally have a relationship that isn't just incel love. During Matt and Tuon's first meeting since Tuon was captured, Tom reveals that Tywin was killed, beheaded by the lamb that was after Matt. That was pretty sad. I thought Tywin was actually okay, despite everything. I don't consider her to be a horrible person for following her country's customs. That might be a controversial take, I'm not sure. Like, I don't think the Shan-Chan are evil either. That's probably a bit more of a controversial one. Like, the way I see it is, they've just been really badly manipulated by their ancestors. Like, Tuon clearly isn't evil, but she still has that way of viewing the Mani, which you could say is evil, but personally I just think it's just this twisted way of viewing people that can channel that's been ingrained into them since I don't know how long ago. Don't really have a good tracking of the timeline here. But moving on from that, the crazy thing is, in my book 9 review, when I said that I thought the 2 ravens on Matt's shoulders from Egwene's vision in book 6 meant that Tywin and Tuon would die, it didn't even register in my head that I was saying Tywin would die. I was just saying that as a prediction for Tuon's death. Hadn't Tywin in my head at all at the time of saying that. So when Tom actually revealed that she had died, I was shocked. So maybe those 2 ravens do actually mean that Tuon will die as well at some point. I joked last video about Matt and how him having all 3 of his lovers be dark friends would be just his luck, but it would actually still be just his luck if all 3 of them died. Matt saw a barrage of colours while Rand was cleansing Saladin. The same thing happened to Perrin. I've been saying since book 2 or 3 that I think both of them will channel at some point. Perrin's basically been confirmed to because of Egwene's visions in book 3 of him flying. And then Matt, I'm not too sure on anymore. He has his whole look ability, which I don't know if that's channeling the one power or not. If I was to throw out a random guess here, I think Matt will channel the true power at some point. Like, I know they're both Taviran, but surely that alone wouldn't elicit such a reaction to Saladin. I mean, maybe it will. It's not like I have the full context of how everything works with all that stuff. Another interesting thing from Matt and Tuon's first meeting was how she asked Matt if he remembers Arthur Hawking's face. So she knows about the past memories. I assume this is all just because of the foretelling Lydia had last book. I'm very curious in seeing how much was actually said in that foretelling. I hope we get to hear the full thing at some point. I really like the chapter where Matt fails spectacularly trying to win Tuon over with an expensive necklace, so he decides to use strategy and treat courting Tuon like a battle, and he comes up with his strategy for gifting her flowers. Pretty enjoyable relationship development. I liked the final Rosebuds maneuver. Clearly Tuon did too. She requests nightly walks and tells Matt that he's allowed to accompany her on them. I'm not sure on the general consensus of Tuon. I haven't looked at many reviews for this just because I want to move on from this book as soon as possible. But I like her so far. She is a very, very arrogant, but no shit, she is the princess of Shan-Chan. Egwene tells Matt that he's already performed his half of the marriage ceremony by saying that Tuon was his wife 3 times. So Tuon pretty much has Matt hook, line, and sinker. She just needs to put him through the motions before saying her half. Egwene also revealed the secret that the Soldam are capable of learning to channel, and Matt makes the connection that means Tuon can too, because she trains the Mani. Thank God he did. I thought that would be something that gets dragged out longer than it needs to. I'm really interested in seeing how Tuon herself actually responds to that revelation. Don't really have much else to say for Matt's arc. Noel is definitely a favourite side character now. He snuck off a few times, so it seems he has his own agenda while travelling with Matt. I would guess it's something to do with his lost memories. Tom was agonizing over his letter from Moraine a lot in this book. I guess it has something to do with Teslin. Maybe she's one of the Red Sisters that helped Gentle his nephew. I'm not really sure why else he would be looking at the letter so much. The antagonist chapters in this book were miles better than the main casts. The first one was Furik, Kareed, and Almarat Moore. They have this really layered conversation. It was probably my favourite interaction in the whole book. Desperate times, I know, but I really love interactions like those in books where you have these characters conversing and there's so many more layers than what's said, and watching from their POVs we get to see them trying to decipher the hidden meanings. Perrin's next, and God was his arc disappointing. I said last review that I was giving up on Perrin because I thought he was just lame after finishing his Becoming a Leader arc. Then during his first batch of chapters in this book, I started to think he was cool again. I love the symbolism with the hammer. He kept talking about how his anger has hardened and shaped for a hammer, and how he has to use a hammer methodically, and he had these lines about the forge, like him having to husband his anger and begin to forge it. And then he even had this other line about him, what was it? Folding himself in around his anger tighter and embracing the heat for energy. I thought that was sick, and I thought he was starting to develop his own version of the void that Rand uses for when he himself starts to channel. But then after the first batch of chapters, this kind of symbolism just isn't really referenced at all for the rest of the book, and once again I was very bored. This book is kind of ironic to me. You guys know how much I love trying to make predictions and pay attention to everything that happens in each book in case it's useful for that, and this book has a lot of setup, but this book is so bloody boring that I was half zoned out reading most of it, and it resulted in me not even absorbing most of the stuff, and I probably missed out on a lot of setup that I should have been paying attention to. It's pretty frustrating. Anyways, I love Balwer as Perrin's spymaster, and I like them interacting with each other, and I especially enjoyed the part where Balwer decides to indefinitely serve Perrin, and I find it really interesting how he's kind of taken over Fael's Aiel wannabes. I wonder how Fael will even react to that. I'm sure they're still her dogs, but like, Solande at least seems to be pretty eager to serve and please Perrin from now on. I'm so over the Berlin and Perrin drama. I really enjoy their relationship and their interactions, and I like Berlin a lot, but this edition here of the camp turning against Perrin because of this rumor that he slept with Berlin is just a tedious bit of drama added in there for me. I'm going to skip forward to the Soha Bor stuff now. I don't think there's really much to mention from when they were at camp. There's Dark Hounds. I presume there's more because of Slayer. We found out that the wolves their souls are used to make Dark Hounds. And Ilias, or Perrin asked Ilias if that could possibly be done to a wolf brother, so I'm guessing that's a bit of foreshadowing there. Maybe Ilias is one, maybe we see a dark friend wolfhound or wolf brother in the future. Mastery said she doesn't know how many wolf packs there are. I am guessing there's 13 because that's a pretty significant number. I think that's all I wanted to mention really. So Perrin goes to Soho Bor and we get an absolutely fascinating description of the process for winnowing the grain. I'm so glad Jordan decided to go through that whole thing with us. There were dead people appearing around the city, and Matt saw some on the way to, what was that place called? Durador. It's been said in the past that the death is the domain of the Dark One, so I assume that's just him starting to touch the world more strongly. Finally, from Perrin, we get the What Must Be Done chapters, and unpopular opinion incoming, I did not like it. I don't know if my mood was ruined by the rest of the book, but I didn't find that moment satisfying in the slightest, though I did think it was cool and pretty funny how even Masayama is kind of like, hey, this guy is kind of crazy, huh? It's hard for me to even express my disappointment in words, to be honest. Perrin's axe to hammer struggle has been going on since book 2, and this being the moment where he throws the axe away just felt incredibly anticlimactic to me. For me, the dark part of what Perrin did isn't cutting off limbs, it was the promise of making the shadow have to beg without their limbs. That was the fucked up part. The axe being used as a tool in that threat didn't really feel like enough of a trigger for that kind of response in Perrin for me. He explains to Ilias how he's scared when he's in battle because he may never see Fael again, and he feels alive when he's in battle, and he's scared that he'll start to get that feeling when doing something like what he did to the prisoner. Please grow some fucking balls, Perrin. Honestly, cry me a river. Spend a day in Rand's shoes. It's the last battle, for fuck's sake. What are you going to do now? Are you not going to fight now with the hammer? What are you going to do against the Shadow? Push them out of your ways? You charge the city? You're going to become a pacifist? To me, there's just not enough there to give what Perrin is saying emotional weight. Take Dalinar in Stormlight 3. Absolutely phenomenal arc in that book, because we've seen just how far Dalinar has fallen in embracing that same feeling of being alive in battle. He didn't just stop himself out of fear of reaching that low. The context is different than Stormlight uses flashbacks, but you get the gist of what I'm saying. You can't say Dalinar's struggle isn't emotionally impactful. It's as if Perrin skipped the conclusion of that arc and substituted it with this moment with the prisoner. Keep the axe until you get to like using it too much. That is a direct quote from Ilyas in book 1. He gave us the condition that early on in the series, and Perrin just sidesteps it and gives a heavily Fael inspired response, which I just was not a fan of. Ilyas even mentioned this condition. He found Perrin in the woods and was like, "Oh, so did you start to like using it?" And Perrin's like, "Oh god, no. Like, what? I know there's subversion of expectations. You shouldn't be angry at a book for not going the way you wanted it to or whatever. But god, that just isn't a satisfying conclusion to this struggle within Perrin to me." In my opinion, this moment would have been immeasurably better if Perrin went on a crazy killing spree against the Shadow, because throughout this book he kept talking about completely wiping them out. If he just went totally unhinged with the axe and then, like, Ilyas or Fael or even Aram made some kind of remark about a smile on his face or something like that, and then he throws away the axe after another monologue, that would have been so much better in my opinion. I would have loved that. I think it would have been a lot more believable. Another thing that really brought down this moment is how bad the relationships in this series are. Because all the romances are insta-love, there's not enough focus on the actual building of the relationships, which just results in Perrin's reasons for leaving the axe behind being so Fael-dependent, not totally believable. I have to tell myself that it works because they're husband and wife. I don't get to see them grow to love each other or see enough meaningful moments between them that makes me value and care about their relationship. Instead, I get a multi-book arc of Perrin being confused over why Fael is angry, Fael being jealous, Fael, Berlin and Perrin love triangle, and more recently, Perrin being constantly worried over Fael. So yeah, Perrin saying all of this is because he doesn't want to become a man that Fael won't have back just isn't good enough to me. After Fael's chapter, we get what is most definitely my least favorite run of chapters in the entire series. Having Elaine's and Egwene's chapters back to back was horrid. I am not being hyperbolic this time. This was genuinely the least fun I've had reading fantasy to date. I asked this last review and I'm asking again now. Why the fuck is Elaine Trakan a main character now? Please make it make sense. Seriously, she drags the books down so much it's not even funny anymore. And yes, I said books plural because she's been doing this for a while now. It's just that it's worse than this one. Like, reading Elaine's chapters in this was like experiencing my brain on 300 ping and I was lagging. Like, I was so out of it when reading her chapters. I would read some bits and go like, what the fuck is even going on right now? Not that it was confusing, I was just so bored and zoning out so often that it was genuinely as if I was lagging. Andorran politics has to be my least favourite addition to the series so far. Political intrigue done right in fantasy is something I absolutely adore, but between Andor and Tar Valon is something I hope to never see again in the foreseeable future. If you couldn't tell by now, my Elaine and Egwene discussions in this video will be a little bit ranty. I might lose some subscribers for what I want to say right now, but fuck it. I think the decision to move this series more towards political intrigue and a bit away from action adventure was just a really bad one, and it's just really clear that political intrigue is not Jordan's strong suit. I think what he excels at is that action adventure route and, you know, his character work. I would try and summarize Elaine's arc, but I actually can't remember it already, and it's crazy because it doesn't even matter that I can't remember the plot points already, because Elaine becoming Queen of Andor is such an irrelevant, redundant plotline, or at least it seems like one to me. I don't know how things go in future books, but at the moment it seems like just a bunch of fodder until the Dark Friends are ready to attack Caemlyn. Don't worry though, I do have notes on what pissed me off during this arc. First up, it occurred to me that she is in fact a clown while I was reading this. We've had 2 books running now where Elaine goes over a whole lot of politics. She clearly knows how it works, and yet somehow she doesn't know how conquest works. How many moments has she had where she says something isn't Rand's decision or the Lion Throne isn't Rand's to give? Rand literally took over Caemlyn, you dunce. He can give the throne to whoever he wants to. Imagine it wasn't Elaine. Actually, we don't even need to imagine. Look at Colliver. She's brown bread. She's 6 feet under. You think she didn't try and have that mentality saying the Sun Throne wasn't Rand's to give? Rand literally marched in and ruined her in minutes when she tried to have that attitude. In fact, she didn't even try to have that attitude. When Rand came back, she was in a state of pure terror. She was shitting bricks, shaking in her boots. And to make it even more ironic, Rand is literally giving Elaine the Sun Throne. Ugh. What else did she do? There's this moment where she says that Rand is gonna have to look after himself when she realizes that he's at the center of the one power phenomenon at the Shadar Logoth. What the hell has Elaine done in this series to look after Rand? Like, she's actually screwing him over at the moment with the anti-Dragon Reborn behavior. After because she's after inspiring the High Lords of Tyr to what's the word, besiege Darlene now. Like, she's just a clown. There's a note that just says bath. If the laundry washing drained my energy, the bath was the final nail in the coffin, and ever since I've just been a zombie trudging through the slog. How many pages was Elaine in that bath for? It was beyond ridiculous. Her arc in general was just frustratingly repetitive. I don't understand why, for some reason, Elaine has to have the thing that she does 10 times per chapter. Early on in the series, it was her saying that she's the daughter heir of Andor. From like books 4 or 5 onwards, it was her constantly raising her chin. And then now it's her constantly complaining about her fucking tea. I hope she chokes to death on the watery concoction. And Monel said that she's going to be getting even moodier and start having channeling issues as the pregnancy progresses. Jordan may very well give me an aneurysm with this character. Speaking of repetitiveness, those damn spies in the palace, they were triggering my PTSD from having to be bored out of my mind reading about Shaolin trying to figure out who's a spy during Rhythm of War. And if I have to hear one more time about Harfer and Nori not liking each other or being jealous of each other, I'll lose my mind. And another thing, the events of Shadar Logoth, everybody reacting to that was incredibly repetitive. Like, I get as we as readers have more info, but god damn, Elaine had to pause to mention that like at least 10 times in her chapters, and then Egwene was doing it too. Like, you have this big moment in book 9 with Saidin being cleansed, and then in book 10 you just get no payoff besides Kat Swain. She's like the only person that actually reacts to it. Everyone else is either like, oh no, they're forsaken, or you have the Ashman being like, oh wow, it's clean, it's clean. I'm already over the ending of book 9. I don't need to witness all these characters experiencing it from afar in the subsequent book. Like, I could understand if it was just once off, like Perrin and Matt, they only reacted to this once and it was done, but it was so repetitive with the girls. The book honestly doesn't even feel like a book 10. It feels like a really drawn out 9.5. I think that's all I have to say about Lane's arc. I hear 10 times more now for having to experience her arc. Like, oh god, at the end of her arc, when they busted out those maps on the table and started listing out a bunch of stuff about the Andoran high seats, I was on the verge of tears from boredom. This brings us to Egwene's chapters. Just like Elaine's chapters, I have already forgotten most of them because I was half asleep reading them. The TLDR is that she's using negotiations with the towers in order to delay them so that Saladar Aes Sedai have time to block the harbors so that they can then starve out the Tower Aes Sedai. I have notes for what I didn't enjoy from this arc. The first one was on Quaindiar. Like, what the hell was that with the Quaindiar reveal? Is that not completely pulled out of your ass convenience here, or am I forgetting some scenes where Moghedien actually did give hints to making Quaindiar? If I am, please correct me in the comments, because it's really annoying. Like, all I remember from book 6 mentions of Quaindiar is Rand talking about the seals, and then during book 4, when Moghedien was fighting Nynaeve, she said that the Mail Adam was made of Quaindiar, or something in the case was made of Quaindiar. I think it was the Mail Adam. Quaindiar was something foreshadowed since book 1. I think it is bullshit for it to be reintroduced like that. So you have Egwene in book 8 using this random unheard of law to get control as Amyrlin for the war. She's not in book 9, and then she comes back in book 10 to completely solve this other issue that they've been having huge problems with, the money issue with Quaindiar, which was just a result of some random information we had no access to as the reader in previous books. I mean, how convenient is that? And I have other problems with Egwene in this book, but they're more petty, so I'm just going to not mention them for the sake of saving time. Something I really didn't like from this arc is the idea among the Aes Sedai now about considering bonding Ashaman. We saw it with the Saladar Aes Sedai, and then we saw Tarna Fair propose the same idea to Pavara. This is an anti-Aes Sedai channel. I know the main theme of this series is balance, but god, does the solution to Ashaman and Aes Sedai conflict need to be bonding? I just want the White Tower to crumble. I know that wouldn't be very good for Tamon Gaidon, but fuck the lot of them. I can count on one hand how many I don't want to see die. Kat Swain, Perrin, Nynaeve, Swan, and that's pretty much all of them. I'll give the fifth finger to Morana for good measure, just to be nice. Can the Black Tower not stay its own thing and, balance out the White Tower as separate entities? They can collab when they need to link. They better get shafted in this deal they're setting up in MBZ4. The Ashman better show them that they're not going to be pushed around, or they won't get the crap end of the bond. Let me reiterate real quick that I understand the Aes Sedai's rationale here. It does make sense for them to think this way regarding the Ashman. I just genuinely don't think they deserve to get what they want here. Aes Sedai in this series have the worst personalities, and they just never have to face consequences for them besides Nynaeve. Doesn't matter how bad Elaine can be, Avienda, Nynaeve, and Brigitte will always see her as a courageous goddess. Doesn't matter how bad Egwene can be either, she'll just always be this girl boss kicking ass as Amyrlin, so determined, such an iron will, never gives up, love Egwene, everybody loves Egwene. It turns out Erengar has been causing the headaches that Egwene's been getting. I initially thought Halima was just using compulsion on Egwene, but when Egwene asks her to leave, she makes the headaches worse in an attempt to get Elaine to ask her to stay. Halima also killed Anaya and Kyren in this book too. Cabriana was Blue Aja, so I just assumed that's why. There's also the mystery of the young sitters, but this book honestly has me in a not very caring mood, so I didn't really bother trying to figure out why that's the case. I assume that it is by Messaana's design, and that they are probably all dark friends. Initially, I disregarded that possibility because I thought that would just be too many, but if the Black Tower, or the Black Tower, if the White Tower has at least 13 Black Aja sisters, then they can just force people to the shadow, so I guess it's not too far-fetched. Nicola and Arena ran off. I said in my book 7 review that I think Nicola will end up a dark friend because she's too ambitious, so I think that's now why she has run off, and I think Arena will be her warder at some point. Egwene had a couple more true dreams as well. The first was of Matt, and he was bowling with men as the pins, and an Illuminator was involved, so I guess Eludra's secrets that she was getting Matt to try and find in book 7 is going to lead to Matt using cannons. The second dream is her climbing a narrow cliff, and the edge drops away, but she's saved by a Shanchan woman with a sword. Then the dream transforms into another one, signifying that the Shanchan will be attacking the White Tower. This attack was actually foreshadowed by Kharid earlier in that book, in the chapter he had with Almarat Moore. And then Egwene even spots a Raken scouting above Tar Valon, which she somehow mistakes for a bat. So I guess the dream was just foreshadowing her capture at the end of the book, but she'll be saved by some woman with a sword during the Shanchan attack. I'm just so happy the White Tower is getting rocked in the near future, guys. Honestly, I'm so ready for the White Tower to take an L. By the end of the book, Egwene is betrayed by somebody in camp and is captured by the White Tower. Easily my favourite part of the book. I'm going to say it was Shiraim that betrayed her. We know she's been snitching. Lelaine, is that her name? Yeah, Lelaine and Elena are other possibilities as well, but I think Jordan might be messing with people that may have forgotten that Shiraim has been snitching and is most likely Black Aja. And I say most likely because I was thinking about this more. When you think about how Alviarin interacts with Messaana, it's pretty similar to how another Forsaken would interact with another one of their underlings. So I guess Shiraim isn't aware Halima is Erengar, and that when she was confronted in her tent in like book 8, I want to say, it was actually Halima, but she didn't want Shiraim to see who it was. Something that just clicked on my head saying all that out loud. I was wondering why Shiraim was having such a meltdown during the meeting in Saladar, but I'm guessing maybe she was just scared that she would get caught out for being a dark friend through a bond or something, because they were just discussing Ashman bonds in that meeting. And honestly, that's all I have to say for the rest of Egwene's arc. But I just wanted to say that the whole time I was reading Egwene's arc, I was just thinking, God, I wish Cadsuane was Amyrlin's seat. If Cadsuane was Amyrlin, the whole tower split would just be finito by now. Alviarin's chapter was probably the best in the whole book. We see her call on Messaana, and we finally see Messaana unmasked. I had no idea who matches the appearance that Alviarin described. She said that she had a face that she vaguely remembers with tantalizingly blue eyes. In my book 4 review, I mentioned that Messaana was in that book's glossary, but I didn't know what character she was or if she was masquerading as somebody. So I went back to book 4, searched for blue eyes. The only two Aes Sedai with blue eyes mentioned in that book were Swan and Danelle. Highly doubt Swan is Messaana in disguise. So it looks like Danelle is Messaana, because what do you know? Danelle is one of the Aes Sedai that marched into Swan's office at the end of that book with Alviarin and Elaida, so she would vaguely remember that face. We get a great appearance from Shardar Haran, where he shows up to punish Messaana for not showing up at Shardar Logoth. And it seems he is actually the Dark One's essence imbued into a fade, because he says that Messaana has always been wasteful. How would he know that if he was just a regular Power of Fate? So he seems to be kind of like the Dark One's avatar in it, or something like that. He ends up also marking Alviarin, which was pretty cool. I wonder if that makes her like some kind of beta Forsaken or something like that, or maybe a what are they called? A Dreadlord. But it seems either way she's on her way to play herself because she wants to use Talene. Little does she know Talene has already been caught. Rand, as always, had good chapters, but he's only in 3 of them, and only 2 of those are his POV. Caswin's POV was decent, but it felt incredibly drawn out because it's just full of Aes Sedai and Ashaman Bond discussion that I didn't really pay attention to. She talked a bit about her hairpiece Terengriel thingy again as well. She mentioned that she doesn't know what 3 of them can do, but one of them can detect mail channelers, so I guess they will be useful at some point going forward. In Rand's POV, we see the arrival of Loyal, Logain, and Davram. I enjoyed the Loyal reunion. Is Loyal what's not to love? Rand is in a fury over the Ashaman bonding the Aes Sedai against their will because he doesn't want to start a war with the White Tower on top of all his other ongoing issues. And he ends up sending the 3 of them to go to the Shanshan to try and make a deal with them because he also doesn't want to spend any more time on the Shanshan because he can't afford to deal with them and the Shadow at the same time. And we get the results of the negotiations at the end of the book, and it turns out that they say Surratt wants Rand to meet Tuon, but we know as the readers that they don't have Tuon at the moment, so it's obviously a trap. This kind of annoyed me. I wish we had a Logain POV instead of one of the Elaine or Egwene chapters. The Shanshan undertone was probably the best thing about this book. We see that Rand is trying to start negotiations with them now. Perrin's already forging an alliance with them. We see from Egwene's POV that the scouting stages of their attack on Tarvalon, and of course Mat is fated to marry the daughter of the Nine Moons. That's the end of the review, guys. Not the most extensive one I've put out so far, but I honestly just don't care about this book. I'm not going to do long in-depth reviews for books that I'm not really that enthusiastic about anymore, because I've done that for pretty much all the slog books, and it just wasn't fun putting out those videos. It takes me a long time to type out the scripts, and recording them takes me literally from when I wake up to when I go to bed sometimes. So yeah, I'm just not doing that for books I'm not as enthusiastic about anymore. Next video will be on The Knife of Dreams, probably out next week. I'll see you guys in the next one. See you.